What if the President of the United States and his party and the ideologue drones who follow along with him are dead wrong about their principal propaganda point? That is, the basis for their class war rhetoric doesn't even exist. Do you think they change their rhetoric? Of course not. You know, we conservatives, we argue facts. We present evidence. We talk about history. We cite the Constitution. What do they do on the left? What do the statists do? They beat their chests. That's it. They just say things. And they think the more they say them, then the more they become fact. And then they accuse you and me of not believing in science and evidence and all this. It's amazing. Another thing they try and pull is the populist propaganda, that they're out for the little guy. Really? Out for the little guy? They're out to control the little guy, and the middle guy, and the big guy. So we get their populist propaganda when in fact they want to centralize decision-making in courts, in bureaucrats, and in politicians. They really hate elections unless they win them. They hate majority rule unless they're in the majority. So they get it all ways. When they lose elections, they institutionalize their ideology and their policies in the courts and in the bureaucracy. And when they win elections, they talk about how popular they are, and they further use the courts with their appointments and the bureaucracy, funding it, growing it, creating it, to institutionalize their philosophy. So when they lose elections, their policies continue. So elections become less and less important. I've talked about this many times. So here we have the Associated Press actually writing the truth, which it does from time to time. You just gotta really dig to get to it. So Obama says he wants millionaires and billionaires to pay the same in federal income taxes, that is, the same rate, as the middle class. Now, these terms are very vague. What are millionaires and billionaires to Obama? Well, millionaires and billionaires to Obama are people who are not millionaires and billionaires. And who's the middle class? Who defines that? How do we define it? This is why the progressive income tax has always been a left-wing tool to turn American against American. The middle class, the definition changes. The rich, their definition changes. The poor, their definition changes. It changes all the time because they must have us at each other's throats. So the worse that Obama does, the worse the economy is, the more destructive his policies, the more he must encourage hate and jealousy between Americans, whatever it is, based on race, age, income, geography, doesn't matter. He needs us fighting with each other so we're not focused on him. But what did I say the other day? We're on to this. We're on to this. And I don't believe it's going to work anymore. Now let's look at the facts. In other words, if you're a drone, you may want to tune out because facts are painful to you. But if you're a thinking human being, then you want to listen to this. From the Associated Press. There may be individual millionaires who pay taxes at rates lower than middle-income workers. In 2009, 1,470 households filed tax returns with incomes above $1 million, yet paid no federal income tax, according to the IRS. But that's less than 1% of the nearly 237,000 returns with incomes above $1 million. By the way, a lot of these individuals file as individuals and they're small businesses. This year, households making more than $1 million will pay, on average, 29.1% of their income in federal taxes, including income taxes, payroll taxes, and other taxes, according to the Tax Policy Center. And by the way, depending on what state you're in, it's much higher, obviously. Now, households making between $50,000 and $75,000 will pay an average of 15% of their income in federal taxes. Okay, so let's stop right here for one moment, shall we? Warren Buffett, a.k.a. Buffett. Oh, yes, I know, but I've been calling him that for years. Warren Buffett. I mean, isn't that what you call it when you see the same word and there's food on the table? Oh, all-you-can-eat buffet. But now his name's Warren, so it's now Buffett. Well, you go to a buffet, all-you-can-eat Buffett? No. Listen, households making $50,000 to $75,000 a year pay on average 15% of their income in federal taxes. So, Warren Buffett has been wrong. I said he's like one of the stupidest billionaires I've ever heard speak, to be perfectly honest. You know, they're like Rain Men on one thing that I know how to buy and sell, buy and sell. Do you know how to write? No, I'm a dummy. So millionaires pay twice as much as a percentage of their income than folks that earn $50,000 to $75,000 a year, 15%. Now, some radio hosts won't even tell you this. You know why? Because the vast majority of our listeners aren't millionaires and billionaires. They're folks that earn $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, $20,000. Maybe they're unemployed. And people don't want to hear this anymore. They want to believe this myth. They want to believe that they're victims. They want to believe that they pay higher rates than millionaires and billionaires. They want to believe that society is unjust, that they're put upon, that they're miserable, not because of anything they've done, but because millionaires and billionaires are screwing them. We've been indoctrinated to this so often, for so long, it's almost unbelievable when I tell you that millionaires pay 29.1% of their income in federal taxes, and people who earn $50,000 to $75,000 a year pay 15% or half the percentage. Now the liberal will start with, well, is that fair? Is that fair? I'm not even getting there yet. Let's get the facts on the table. Now, what about lower income households? Households making between $40,000 and $50,000 pay on average 12.5% of their income in federal taxes. That's not 29.1%. Households making between $20,000 and $30,000 will pay 5.7% in federal income taxes. So the entire class warfare propaganda game is built on a foundation of lies, perpetrated by politicians and their supporters, because they want to grow the government. They want your vote. They want to pretend that they're populists, when in fact what they are big government authoritarians who don't give a damn what you really think or what you want. They're trying to manipulate you. Now, Obama's claim, AP writes, and we talked about this, hinges on the fact that for high-income families and individuals, investment income is often taxed at a lower rate than wages. The top rate for dividends and capital gains is 15%. There's a reason for that. The reason is that money's already taxed at the corporate tax rate. And we talked about that. It's double taxation. So by the time you sell stock or bonds or whatever the investment is and you get the money, it's already been taxed. Even your real estate. When you sell it at a capital gains, you earn a capital gains on it. How many years have you been paying property taxes on that real estate? Over and over and over again, year after year after year. And then they go, wow, he's only paying a 15% capital. What are you talking about? You've been paying taxes on it all along. Now, I know the liberal will get this whole, wow, well, don't you get this out of taxes? And I'm not talking about that yet. We're talking about how they lie and how they use class warfare, how they pretend to be populists. Now, let me ask you this question. We have 9.1% official unemployment, but when you add it all up, it's closer to 20%. are the almost 20% of Americans who are unemployed, underemployed, temporarily employed, part-time employed, or who've dropped out of employment altogether, are they millionaires and billionaires for the most part? Are they millionaires and billionaires for the most part? Obviously not. They're working people who've lost their jobs on the assembly line or in retail outlets, or their small businesses have closed, or on and on and on. They used to be coal miners. They used to work on oil rigs. They used to drive trucks. These are not millionaires and billionaires, for the most part, who are losing their jobs as a result of Obama's policies, as a result of big government leftism, as a result of high taxes, massive regulations, deficit spending, big government interference. No. They're our neighbors. Now, you want to talk about class warfare? The bottom line is this. Statism. That is liberalism, socialism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it. I call it statism. Statism destroys the American dream for people who are not millionaires and billionaires. It also drags down millionaires and billionaires, but I'm talking about the vast majority of the American people. Statism destroys the American dream. That's what you're seeing. Let me ask you a question. If we were to do what Obama wants, massively increase income taxes on non-millionaires and non-billionaires, because that's what he's talking about. Let's put his propaganda aside. Which won't work. Do you think they're done? Remember the value-added tax that was bouncing around? We need a VAT tax, which is basically a sales tax at every level of service and production, in addition to a federal income tax. A massive national sales tax. Don't you think they're going to seriously consider that again? That's been popping around. How about eliminating mortgage interest rates, interest deductions, and charitable contribution deductions? Oh, they want to eliminate that for people who earn over $200,000 and $250,000 a year, but they're going to eliminate it for everybody. They now call these loopholes. So you took out a mortgage, and in that mortgage, you calculated what your interest deduction will be, right? Am I right? You'd be out of your mind if you didn't, to determine whether you can afford that home, right? Or the investment. Maybe you own an apartment or something. So the government steps in and takes it away because it's a loophole now? Or charitable deductions. What's that going to do to private charitable organizations? How many jobs will they lose? And how many people will go unserved? Everything is to be drawn into Washington, D.C. All the power. They're going to wipe out any vestige of private activity. Everything's to be controlled by the federal government. And then what, ladies and gentlemen? Will they be satisfied then? No. Because they're never going to be satisfied. You cannot satisfy statists. Ever. Never. That's the bottom line. But now that we know the class warfare game is a fraud game, will we hear Brian Williams at NBC News talk about the fraud? No. Will we hear Diane Sawyer? I got to think of their names. I don't even watch these news programs. Diane Sawyer at ABC News. No. Scott Pelley. Who's he? The CBS News. Will we hear him? No. This whole thing will be covered up as if the Associated Press, a wire service. So it goes to thousands of news outlets. Thousands. It'll all be covered up as if they never reported on it. They don't just want to increase the individual income tax rates. They want to increase the corporate income tax rates. They want to increase the capital gains tax rates. They want a value-added tax. Remember that hearing that we talked about here, the first to break that story? About how they want to take your 401k and your 403b and the other private pension plans, and in exchange you get an annuity every year from the federal government, much like Social Security, huh? Remember that? Oh, these people are never done, folks.